Who wants to start us off?
You can start us off, since this is another one of your guests that is near and dear to your heart that you worked extensively with. I think you should be the main guy to introduce him.
All right. I feel bad because every time I feel like I've been sort of pulling in a lot of guests, and I'm like, I feel like I'm not doing as much as Jean Claude guests as we should, since we co-host the podcast. Like, that's why I'm pushing so hard to get Nick Terhorst.
Oh, yeah. Well, she would be an interesting person to have on the show. But for the time being, we have the lovely Daniel Gray on the show, so...
Oh, welcome to Almost Adults. Welcome to Almost Adults.
Oh, my friend Gage is gonna talk to you. Oh, and Jean Claude, Jean Claude, he'll be there, too. Even though they're not close together, they're far away. There, one's in Tampa, the other one's in LA. Oh, Gage, what's the show called again?
Fucking, it's Almost Adults. Shit.
Almost adult. Shit.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course.
Daniel Gray is here.
Yes.
We didn't get to work very much, because you were in Gage's film Basic Training, a part of the Chronos series, correct?
Mm-hmm. That is right. That's where I met Gage.
I know I walked in on one of the sets before, and I don't think we ever spoke in person.
Very possibly not. If we did, it was briefly. I will admit, when I first walked onto Chronos, it was my first big film project, and I was kind of like really hyper-focused. And the only like stress break I got that first shoot was when somebody challenged me to a game of ping pong. So I was able to do that, at least at Domi Station, where we filmed.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's actually, that's where I walked in, Domi Station, and I forget what I was doing there. Kat was there. You guys were filming the shot where... What was the name of the dorky character that...
Daniel Gray.
He said character, not actor.
Oops.
Mitchell Pearson.
Yes.
I played the older version of Mitchell Pearson.
Right.
Robert played the younger version of him.
That's right. You were filming both scenes where you were in the office and then he was collecting the file cabinet, right? And Carlos
That's
came
right.
in.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember this stuff. This is good. Wasn't a part of Chronos, but I watched it all.
Yeah, this is good. You remember a lot more than me, man. You're bringing like more memories to this, and I'm like, oh yeah, that was like the only day that we worked incredibly hard and were the most professional at. The rest of the day we were like, we could just wing it. We'll just get the actors and the skeleton crew in here.
See, you say that, but I remember that after the shoot was over, because of the day and time we wrapped the shooting that night, we all broke into a chorus of Billy Joel's Piano Man.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I remember.
Because we wrapped shooting at 9 o'clock Saturday night.
Oh,
for
that's
that
amazing.
scene.
Yeah, we started fairly early too, didn't we?
We did, because we had, the arrival to the station, the walkthrough, the multiple angles of the scene with the computer, including the blank glass screen that would turn into the computer screen that was being looked at. And then you had the reverse angle because of the whiteboard. That was my half of it. And then you did the other half with Carlos and Robert for the scene with the younger Mitchell Pearson.
Yeah. Little trivia on Daniel's and Carlos's characters. Carlos was named Vince Holt because Vince was named after Vince Gilligan, the creator of Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, and Holt was my little brother. And Daniel's character, Mitchell Pierce, was based off of Mitch Hurwitz from Arrested Development, and Pierce, my older brother.
Oh.
You extended the name of your brother to give me the last name, because I remember when we first got the script, it was Pierce, but by the time I got to Domi Station, they lengthened it to Pearson, because they wanted it to sound more like a last name than having two first names.
Yeah.
That is true. But that's a little trivia for you Chronos junkies.
Oh, I'm one of them. I'm writing that down. I'm putting it on the Chronos forums right after this.
Putting on the Chronos Reddit.
Yeah, the guys are going to freak out when they hear about this.
The guys. You mean me and Carlos?
Are you guys going to do like a BuzzFeed list, 10 things you missed in Chronos?
Yes.
10 things you missed in Chronos.
If you notice, in episode 10, in the bottom right-hand corner at 7 minutes and 10 seconds, Jean Claude's penis enters the shot for a
Jean-Claude,
brief
we
moment.
know you're lying because we didn't even make it to episode 10.
Was there not 10 episodes?
There was 8, I believe.
There were seven official episodes, and then the transitional
Quote, unquote,
episode, Dawn
epilogue.
Days. Yeah.
Oh.
That's not to say Jean Claude didn't film his own episode 10 and is keeping it private somewhere.
I did.
Yeah, we have 3 episodes that we just never released, and we're just waiting for that right time.
Yeah, 2 final episodes just recorded entirely with a webcam of this guy that's just been noticing all this crazy shit happening around town. And he's just like, I just saw some cyborg lady that's from from Russia beat up some bitch. It was crazy. Hanging out in the woods.
Also known as an FSU pep rally. Happens there
Oh,
all the time.
yes.
Ooh.
Zinger.
Ooh. A bazinger.
Awesome.
I didn't want to. I got so close to saying bazinga. I want to.
No.
Yeah, refrain
Yeah,
from
I can't
that.
really do that. I work for Warner Brothers now. I legally cannot say bazinga.
What, it's in your contract?
No. I have certain opinions on that show, and I think it would be best not to share it since I have involvement with that company.
Fair enough.
Do they produce that show?
They do produce that show. Yes, very successful show. That's what I'll say about it.
Welcome to Almost Adults, episode...
11.
It's not 10, is it? Because if it's 10, you just gave me I don't know if I want to do another episode 10.
That's right. The episode prior to this was the romantic
Love
episode.
cast.
That was
Yes.
episode 10, the Love Cast.
Yes.
So we are at episode 11, the big 1-1.
Big
and
1-1.
We have our number one guest here. And
Well, maybe your oldest one.
yes.
Yeah, you're our first married guest, my friend.
Yes, I had a feeling that when you sent me the little list of topics that you wanted to cover, that was the case. So I'm here for you to pick my brain, even though it's only been a little over a year.
Yeah, that's more than what we can say. We have never been married, or I've never been married. I'm not sure about Jean Claude.
Well, there was the 2 divorces, but I'm trying to get those annulled and start fresh. So let's pretend those didn't happen.
Okay,
Okay,
yeah,
sure.
those were like practice marriages. Let's be real.
Yeah.
Reset button on life. I understand.
There we go. It all works out. And one of them wasn't even to like a human, so I don't think it counts.
Was it to a
Anyways,
cyborg? Okay.
we're just going to glance over all that stuff. If you want to read into my dark past, go on our forums.
Go on our Reddit. On the episode I was editing, you mentioned like, oh yeah, go over to our Reddit. And I'm like, oh man, he's throwing more social media at me.
Does that require you to make a Reddit?
No, it doesn't. But like, if like we had a hardcore listener who'd be like, "Where's your Reddit, guys?" And since I'm in charge of all the social media, I would have to put that together.
Well, when that fan does come around, I will take up the duty of creating a Reddit. I've been on Reddit before. I don't have a Reddit account. I don't know how Reddit works, but I will design a Reddit page if that's what you do.
Maybe it's best for me to do the Reddit. Because you're just like, I've never touched it before, I've never seen it, but I'll do it, Gage. And I'm like,
See, in my opinion, that actually makes it much more intriguing for Jean Claude to be the one to do it, because I'd be interested to see how it would come out.
It's just a bunch of MySpace, like, what are the little codes that you type in to change the background on stuff? There'll be a link to a bunch of those.
You could get a little animated GIF that like flashes and
Yes, exactly.
yeah, if you go to the Almost Adults Reddit, it's just a gif of a Neopet jumping up and down.
sounds legit.
I'm
It's
about
a
it.
very cute Reddit. But anyways, for those who have not been keeping up with our Reddit, Daniel Gray is our next guest, and he is here with us today because we want him here, and
That's
because
good to
he's
know.
married and an actor and a good guy.
Not necessarily in that order.
These are
Yeah.
solid reasons.
Not necessarily in that order. I would put nice guy as number one.
Oh, that's nice. Thank you.
It is very nice.
don't
That's
know if
our
it's
only
true.
credential that we require if you come on the show.
Real,
You gotta
really.
be a nice guy.
Yeah,
Well,
be
that's
a
good.
nice guy. That's our rule of thumb in general. Just be nice.
Yeah, be a nice person. You don't have to be a jerk to people to get where you need. If you do have to be a jerk to get where you need, then you probably didn't deserve to be there anyway.
All right, so don't be a jerk.
Yes.
Is that how you got married, Daniel?
Well, it's funny you say that. No, I can't honestly say that's the reason.
Oh, you were a jerk and then got married?
Well, no, I'm just saying that wasn't the reason. A long time ago, I'll say in the late 90s, I won't specify a year because I promised the person in my past that I would not try to pinpoint it. Something happened that was emotionally traumatic, and for the longest time, I just kind of withdrew from what we would call social circles. I mean, I was out there with quote-unquote friends, but I wasn't really hardcore looking for anything. I found myself unable to trust people.
I find that incredibly interesting. Sorry to interrupt, but
No.
I'm just going to say it's interesting because when we first saw you, you were like super pleasant, you were very professional, and you were just like a joy to be around, a guy.
I appreciate that. I mean, I try. I do try to be pleasant, even when I wasn't. I hate to say it. I often try to be pleasant. I try to be nice. I try to be professional all the time, no matter how I'm feeling, because when I was feeling down, I always felt I didn't want to drag down other people with me. I always just tried to be a nice person, mostly because when I wasn't trusting people, I thought, well, you know, I need to be guarded. So I'll admit that sometimes that facade was just that. I lived in Tallahassee from 2002 on and made a lot of changes in my life, most of them positive. I think we've talked about this before, Gage, and as late as 2012, I was actually almost 400 pounds. Part of that was emotional distress from a lot of emotional trauma, a lot of things, and you get in your head. And when I finally decided to change that, I went to see a nutritionist and a bariatric surgeon, and as I'm sitting here today talking to you, I'm 220.
Nice.
Which is what I was in high
Congratulations.
school. I had to do a surgery to do it. For the longest time, I begged off that surgery because I thought it felt like quitting. But after talking to enough people who are like, especially the bariatric surgeon is the one who told me that once people reach a specific body weight and body mass index, dieting only works for like 5%. So it won't work. So it helped with my confidence. I met my wife at an audition for a stage play. And my friends of both of us, Naomi knows Rose Mock, who's really, really heavily involved in the theater scene in Tallahassee, kind of matched us up in her mind, and we started dating, and it didn't work out at first because of the lack of trust. I basically put that wall up, and we were off and on for a bit, and I really thought it was 100% permanently done, and she did too. And then something happened that triggered in my mind where it's like that wall came down, and I realized I can't keep living like this, and this is who I want, and this is what I want. So I went back to her for asking for one more chance. That would be in August of, I guess it was 2013, and in May of 2014, I proposed, and we got married last February.
Nice. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
That is awesome.
I know it happened a while ago, but it still calls for congratulations.
I appreciate that.
So
we haven't killed each other yet, so progress.
Two things to branch off of that. The first one is, I feel like I might have said it in our last podcast, maybe not, but I was watching it was just a documentary or some little video that had regards to the competitors that had finished The Biggest Loser, the show, and it was discussing from a physician's point of view that some of the contestants that had finished the show and lost all this weight, within the next couple of years that they had continued their lifestyle, they had continued to do the same training regimen that they did on the show, eat the same way, and yet they regained the weight that they had lost on the show, even though they hadn't bounced back into their old habits. And one of the reasons was kind of the same thing that you were talking about, is once you reach kind of a certain threshold of weight, even if you go on that show and you intensely train and you completely change your lifestyle, it's almost like your body has this rubber band spring-like effect. And so you may lose that weight for a temporary amount of time, but your body will immediately start to compensate by lowering your metabolism and increasing your hunger to the point where it's like holding your breath, where you can do it for maybe a minute or so, but after a while it just gets to the point where you're physically incapable of fighting back anymore and you just bounce back.
That's what happened to me before I went in for bariatric. I mean, I tried everything under the sun you could think of, every possible eating plan, every possible, a bunch of doctors. I went to trainers, and I would lose, say, 25, 30 pounds. And then no matter what I did, I would stop losing weight. It was almost like, what you're doing right now will help you lose this much. And nothing I did would help it go farther. And I couldn't exercise any more strenuously than I had been, for the simple reason that, I had, because of the weight, when I tried to walk too much, my legs went numb. I mean, it was literally physically impossible for me to do a lot of exercise. And when I talked to the bariatric surgeon, the things I learned are people in my condition often have an elevated level of a particular hormone called ghrelin, which is actually the hunger hormone, which makes your body feel hungry when it's not. And I did have elevated levels of ghrelin. Now, the reason that gastric bypass, I took gastric bypass versus the lap band for the simple reason that the lap band is more defeatable. All it does is basically tie off a section of your stomach. And if you have liquids or creamy foods, it's easy just to get through. Ice cream, for instance, would have no effect on somebody who had lap band. It'd be just because it's a liquid. Physically removing part of my stomach, and it's not just the removal of the stomach. I may be getting a little too graphic here, but they actually rewire a bit of your intestines so that when you do digest food, it goes from the stomach directly. It skips the first part of your intestines that absorbs a lot of the calories. It's actually why gastric bypass patients have to be very careful when they're drinking alcohol, because when you drink alcohol, what happens is it skips the metabolism stage, and you can drink a shot of whiskey, and in 5 minutes it can be in your bloodstream directly. And what'll happen is I'll drink alcohol, and 10 minutes later I'm slobbering drunk. But then 20 minutes after that, I'm completely sober again. It's a trick I've done at parties that people find hilarious. I'll be in the middle of a conversation, slurring my words like I'm totally drunk. And in the middle of an answer, my speech will completely clear up like I hadn't been drinking at all. It's interesting. And because you don't absorb calories like you did, and that's a permanent change. I mean, I don't eat like I used to. I mean, I would go to a fast food restaurant and find myself getting 1,500 calories per meal. It was crazy.
Wow.
Now I just eat normally, one burger, fries, and a soda, or whatever. And as long as I stay to the normal amount of food, I stay between 219 and 226, depending on the day. So I've tested it to see if I eat very little versus more than normal, and I can't seem to break out of that. This seems to be more my body has decided it needs to be. So I completely understand. Body chemistry is a very strange thing.
Yeah, I just finished my course in medical physiology, and all the stuff regarding like GI physiology was incredible. And that's definitely the body's way of just compensating. It will find a threshold that it just wants to stay in, and then it will fight back against any changes against that. So I have nothing to complain about with my current body weight, but I've been trying to actually, with my height, I should be at a higher weight than I currently am, and my body is, no matter how much I eat and whatever methods I change, my body wants to stay at the same weight that it is. So, I'll find a way somehow. I find working out and increasing my weight via like muscle mass is like the most effective way, rather than any sort of...
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I learned is, people who were my height, and when I was losing weight, people who are my height that weighed the same amount just looked so much better than me. It's because muscle is denser than fat. Mm-hmm. So, 10 pounds of muscle, you look a lot thinner than 10 pounds of fat. It's just, that's why people who are larger body weight, because of the fat tissue, they tend to float easier than those who don't.
Physics.
Yes.
Damn, that's cool. The other point that I was going to bring up regarding your relationship and being closed off is I've found myself in the same kind of scenario every once in a while. I've been in a couple different relationships, but only 2 have been anything significantly long-term. And I found...
What would you define as long-term, if you don't mind me asking?
For me, long-term has been like 6 months to a year.
That's what I would consider long-term. So really, I just consider myself to be in like 0 relationships because I haven't not had a serious relationship, I don't think, ever.
Well, I found that after my first serious one in high school, that one being 6 months, after that ended, I just closed myself off to anything serious for a while. And then only until the end of sophomore, beginning of junior year, I think, of college is when I met Sarah. And then that lasted like another year. And that ended because I was graduating and moving back home, and she still had another year. Or no, I appreciated what we had. That's why I ended it at the time that I did, because I'd rather end it at the time before there's a possibility that we descend into like just bad relationship stuff from being long distance, which is something I knew I couldn't do. So it's cool.
Right. It's cool.
Cool.
Okay.
And I have completely derailed this entire conversation.
Why?
The weight loss subject.
Talking about weight loss. It's okay. My mic was unplugged, so I had to plug it in and then re-record real quick.
Okay. Oh, you're good. I was happy with where the conversation was going. I know we didn't get any sort of topics yet, but,
No, we were talking about marriage and just Daniel's sort of journey. Daniel, you can continue that if you want.
What I found, when I was younger, and oddly enough, as an actor, I find it ironic now that, when you're a kid, when you're growing up, your ideas and your impressions of what love and marriage is basically formed through television and movies and books. You think it's going to be this incredibly wistful journey, and everything is going to be butterflies and music and happiness. And I think for the longest time, one of the reasons I didn't have success is because that's what I expected, and when it didn't happen, I thought I was doing something wrong. As I got older and grew out of my mid-20s and started to like form my own brain as a mature adult, it became very clear that they say you can't help who you fall in love with. That's absolutely correct. The thing is, it's also a decision to stay that way, because you can be in love with somebody, but you really have to evaluate your relationship with them. I've been in love with people where it was very clear very quickly that we just weren't compatible, and that if we had gotten together, it would have been ended in something very, very, I wouldn't say violent, but at least unpleasant. 1 is falling in love, 2 is recognizing compatibility, and 3 is finally making the decision, yes, this is what I want, this is who I want, I know that we can make this work, and this instead of not. And so marriage is a decision. Love is not a decision, but marriage is. That's basically the best way for me to say it. You actually have to consciously make the decision that you want to put forth the effort to keep the relationship with this person, and only this person, for the rest of your life. And then you have to realize at that point that once you do that, keeping it going, no matter how much you're in love with each other, is a lot of work. And I know that sounds cliche because everybody says it, and it is true. I mean, if it wasn't for the fact that we were married, I'm sure there were times that one or both of us would want to just get up and walk away because of the situation, how angry we were, how frustrating things were. You look across the table at that person and know that they've got your back and you've got theirs, and that no matter what happens, they will be there for you to lean on, for you you to confide in, for you to get support from, and it makes that frustration kind of melt away, and all those little picadillos and frustrations worth it.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
You said marriage is a decision.
Yes, it is.
Can you recall when specifically you made that decision to get married to Leslie?
Yeah, it was funny. It was the Theater Tallahassee was having their annual awards ceremony, and it was 2013. It was a year after we'd met. We had just attended the award ceremony for that year and Next Fall, which was the play that I was not in. That was actually how I met them, but it was a good audition, but I just didn't fit the parts. So I ended up working as a stage manager for that show. That show swept all the awards. Leslie actually won Best Actress for that. The show won Best Show, and I'm sitting with them because I was part of that show, even though Leslie and I were not together and there was still awkwardness. It was literally during that award ceremony when I realized that I looked across at her and I was so happy that the show had won, that she had won, and it felt wrong, and it felt almost like a gyp that I couldn't go over to her and share in her joy, and it just crushed me. There was a wall there keeping that, and I wanted to share this moment. I wanted to share that moment. And when I was thinking about wanting to share that moment with her, it hit me that it wasn't just that moment that I wanted to share with her. It was all the ones to come. And that's when I made the decision that, you know what, I know she's probably really angry at me because I've been really non-committal because of my trust issues, but I'm going to go up to her and tell her the truth. And if she says, no, I don't want to go through that again, then I'll say, you know what, cool, I understand, it's my fault. But if she did, then I'll be happy. And turned out that, she was willing to give it one more shot. And that was the last shot I needed. And we've been together ever since.
Boom. Very nice.
Very cool, man. Frankly, it amazes me just how people can just bounce off each other. It sounds like I'm describing this podcast, but I'm describing marriage. It's funny how, two people can just bounce off each other for, years and years and still be very happy.
I remember last week you said your checklist. You're talking about your checklist of the things you were looking for. And I know you talk about, you mentioning the video game thing. I was like that at one point where I was like, you know what? I'm never going to be happy unless I marry a fellow geek. And it turns out that that's not necessarily true. We share enough interests. We're theater people. We love the Miami Dolphins. We're from South Florida. We ended up loving the Dolphins at the same time, so that's something else. We both like Florida State football. The most important thing, my friend Scott once told me this before I got married to Leslie, is the most important thing that you can do is find somebody who, even if they don't share your brand of crazy, understands your brand of crazy and supports it. So, I love Disney movies beyond any other animated films in general. She likes them, but not nearly as much as me, but she understands and she actually appreciates my passion for them. She is nuts about opera because she's a classically trained singer. She went to FSU Music School. Again, not my thing, but I appreciate and adore that she's so passionate about it. And there are things that each of us have that we are really, really interested in that we actually have been able to turn the other person. I wasn't a huge musical theater buff until I met her. I liked musical theater, but I'm much more into it now. She never watched a single thing by Joss Whedon until she met me, and now she's a huge fan of Firefly, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, loved Cabin in the Woods. So, not everything. She's still iffy on Lord of the Rings and Star Wars because that's not her genre, but she will watch them, but she's still not huge on them. And, there are things that she watches, her television shows that I'll watch that I'm just not enthused with, but I'll watch them because she does, and I appreciate that she enjoys them. So, it's a give and take. And I remember you mentioning not wanting to be around 24/7. I'm like what you said last week, Jean Claude. You said you can be extroverted, but you like to be an introvert.
Yeah.
If I don't recharge, I lose it. I can't be around people that long for a long period of time. She knows sometimes when I've had a weekend or a week where I've been around a lot of people that I'm going to go over to my computer, I'm going to put my headphones on, and I'm probably going to play a video game like Fallout or something like that just so I can detach from the world for a few hours, just so I can recharge my batteries, or I will go crazy.
Yeah.
But she understands that.
It's burnout. It 100% is.
Just to clarify, you're talking about the Sabrina episode.
Yes.
Because we recorded an episode about 2 weeks ago just devoted all to relationship stuff.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm talking about the Sabrina episode specifically last week. Yeah, the one that.
Yes. I just want to clarify because when you say last week, people might think of the week before that, the Love podcast that we recorded.
Okay. Yeah, this is specifically with Sabrina Torres, who I've actually spoken to before, and what she said is very, very simple. I think it was funny. I think it's telling. Also, I don't want to get into gender politics. That it's telling that because of the way women are treated on social media, you don't give out her Twitter handle. Where I think if it had been a guy our male guest, it probably would not have been as hesitant.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's something. I don't want to delve too deep into it.
No, I don't. I noticed that when the conversation was coming up, and I was like, yeah, I mean, it wasn't even, I didn't even blink. I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't have given it out either if I'd been her.
I don't think she's very active on Twitter either, so I don't know. I'm going to get a lot of tweets from people who's like, hey, you know that Sabrina girl? I'm going to hit her up. And I'll be like, okay, I'll give her your information.
No, don't
Don't do it.
Figure out who they are before
I mean,
you
I'm not
go through.
Jean Claude. I'm not really going to give them
I don't
the
know
information.
how much I trust you.
Who are you anymore?
Well, going back quickly to what we were talking about in terms of our lists, I actually want to slap on an addendum to mine that you actually, Daniel, made me realize that I've actually thought about before, and I guess I didn't mention it during that actual podcast when we were listing the stuff off. So what I found, not necessarily in my long-term relationships, but in the relationships that have been shorter, actually scratch that, my first high school relationship this happened. My personality is pretty strong, and I have a very wide variety of interests and passions that I'm interested in, and I found that in the people that I date, there's a possibility that, and this can happen to anyone, it's not specifically me, but I found it happens to me occasionally, that they will morph their personality to mine and kind of match it in a way, whether or not they intentionally do it to think that that's what I want from them, or...
They're a chameleon girlfriend.
Sorry?
A chameleon girlfriend. They blend in with you.
Or they just map their characteristics a little bit off of mine and start sharing those same interests and same things that I do, habits, stuff like that, which is why I've always kind of gone after really strong women with strong personalities and just strong everything, because that's cool. That's what I'm into, but it's also maybe subconsciously because then they'll retain their own whatever they got.
I think this goes without saying, but let me clarify something real quick. When I talk about like checklists, I don't actually looking for the girl to fit every one of that section.
It's impossible to find somebody like that.
Exactly. It's like
as
improv.
as you get older, you realize that trying to fit anybody into a box is just, it's silly. You mentioned Jean Claude about people morphing their personality into you, and I completely get where you're coming from. I've had a couple girlfriends in the past, and I've seen a couple friends end up with girls like that, and they'll always ask me, hey man, what do you think of her? And you have to be very diplomatic. My thought is, you like a girl, you went after her for a specific reason because you liked the way she was, and if she's going to morph herself into you, then do you still like her? Because she's not the same person she was when you liked her. It just makes me wonder.
Oh, yeah.
But like you said, strong women for sure, because I can say something to them, I can ask their opinion, and I know that when they respond to me, they're going to give me their opinion. And if they like my wife, who is half Dominican and half Puerto Rican, she'll give me her opinion with a little bit of sass on the end of it, because she doesn't know how to do anything else.
I love women that'll just hold you to your shit and will just call you out on all your stuff, because otherwise they'll let you off the handle.
As an artist too, because when you go in and just be like, hey, how is this? You don't want anyone who says great, just keep doing that. You want people to be like, well, I like this, I didn't like this, and where am I even going with this?
It's even more important in something like marriage, because beneath all that, they could call you out on all your stuff, they could critique you to hell, but beneath that, that they're still, they still love you.
They still support you, they just want you to be the best that you possibly can.
And it won't sting as much.
They say, well, I prefer, you mentioned it with the acting, Gage, and I'm glad you did, because that's actually one of my biggest pet peeves. When I was starting to, I say actually a lot, I've got to stop doing that. When I was putting together my reel and getting my clips together from the various projects that I've done, I didn't know which clips to use, and I didn't know which projects showed my ability the most, because what I have found out is you never know which ones you are the best at, because I have seen recordings of myself on stage where I know for a fact that the show and the performance were great because anonymous people were saying stuff, and yet when I see myself on that stage, all I can see is me. It's impossible for me to see anybody else. So I can't trust my own judgment on what is the best projects. So I talked to people and I asked them for an opinion, and it got to the point where I had to almost have this script where I say, look, I understand you don't want to hurt my feelings. I understand you think I always want to hear you tell me I was great. I don't want that. I need honest criticisms. I need honest, critique, a feedback. Please tell me what you liked and what you didn't. I need to know what I can do to get better. I need to know how to improve. I need to know which of these clips show me and my ability the best, because I had to put my best foot forward to somebody who doesn't know me at all, who is going to be looking at this conglomeration of work to determine, one, whether they want to represent me, and two, when a casting director takes a look, they're going to be looking to determine whether or not I fit their profile. So that number of people that I feel I can trust to go to for honest criticism is very, very small. My wife is one. I have 2 or 3 directors in Tallahassee that I will go to behind. I don't do it publicly. I shoot them a little message saying, hey, can you take a look at this? But that's about it, because I honestly believe they don't do it maliciously. They're trying to be nice. They're trying to, pump up your self-esteem, and they want to tell you you're great, and you want to believe it, but at the same time, you weren't perfect. Mm-hmm. And you want to know where those little chinks are in your armor so you can knock out those dents and become better. When I say like this, like I'm poo-pooing the opinion of the audience, and I'm not. It's just, I love it. We're actors. We're vain creatures. We live on praise. We live on, what's the word I'm looking for? Validation.
Right.
But when it comes to actually becoming better in our craft and becoming more serious about our craft, we really do want the negative feedback as much as the positive, because we have to know where we're lacking in order to get better at what we do.
Yeah, and actually, the majority of those audience members that end up saying that you're great, and they most likely lack the ability to efficiently articulate what was wrong, rather than they're probably more suited to being able to tell you what you did right and praise you for that, rather than being able to tell you what you did wrong.
Or they might just not feel comfortable telling you that you did wrong.
That's it. I mean, I understand that. I've been in that same situation. I've been to shows where I felt overall it just wasn't something I enjoyed. It wasn't necessarily because of the people in it or, this production. Sometimes the show itself is just not my cup of tea. And so when somebody comes up to me, if they pointedly ask me what I thought of it, it depends on the environment I'm in. I mean, if I'm standing in the theater surrounded by a bunch of people after the show, I'm not going to sit there and say, I hated it. But, I'll focus on the good. But my friends in the theater community in Tallahassee now know me well enough that they know to come to me in an instant message or in a private moment to say, hey man, I really appreciate, what did you see? And I'll be happy. I'm never mean about it, but if somebody asks me for an honest criticism, I will tell them, hey, this is what I thought. This is what I thought was great. This is what I didn't like so much. I thought this might have been better. But I've had people come to me after the fact and saying, no, I appreciate you being honest, because they do appreciate that in the long run. When they're on a high, when anybody's on a high of a performance, being told immediately that they wasn't very good can kill them.
Yeah.
You have to come out from when the adrenaline's done, when, the party atmosphere, the celebration of, we just finished an incredible run. It's basically knowing when. I mean, and again, you don't pointedly go at it. I mean, because
you have to ride the wave.
You do. The biggest thing I've learned being in a theater community is that not everybody, especially in a community theater, this is not necessarily as true for professionals, but when you're in a community theater, everybody in the backstage or on stage could be there for a completely different reason. Somebody could be there just because it's something they really love doing. Somebody may look at it as a way to expand their horizon. Somebody's doing it because they're passionate about the craft, and you can't project your values onto someone else. When I first started, I was just happy to be there, because it'd been so long since I'd done theater. And I saw people there who were very, very serious about it. And I was intimidated by them, because I'm like, man, I'm never going to be where they are. Not even 6 years later, I kind of feel I am where they are when it comes to being serious about it. But at the same time, I've had to learn that when you have people who are there because they view it as something to do, that you have to remember that even if they're there professionally or not, they do want to enjoy it. And so I've had to curb my own inner voice saying, you know what, they're not taking this seriously. They could very well be taking it seriously. They're just there for a different reason, so it comes off different. That's what, especially in theater. Film, it's a little different, because when you do film, the rehearsals are much shorter process than a stage play would be. And when you're in a stage play, you're talking about working with the same people for 2 to 3 months almost every night to make sure the things go off well. So that becomes almost like a family, versus, in Kronos it was a little different because it was a web series and not just a one shot. Just working is a little more, it changes you and how you view things. I'll admit, there's been times in the past when I was working at Theater Tallahassee that I was not the nicest person to some of the people in the cast. I got really frustrated sometimes, and looking back on it, I realized I probably came across as a little bit of an elitist, and I don't like that. I don't like looking back on it and realizing that, but it's the truth. And now, because of that recognition, one of my biggest pet peeves in theater is when people use the fact that they're involved in theater to act superior to other people. Mm-hmm. My biggest thing, I actually did my first ever video blog a couple of months ago, and my point was that art should improve you, but the only person you should ever feel superior to is the person you were yesterday. I cannot stand when people talk like they're actors and then talk down to people who either aren't involved in acting or in theater, or try to make it that what they were involved in is somehow more important or more substantial than what other people are doing, because all that does is create a schism in theater and make the people who are just trying to get there feel like they don't belong and maybe just shy away. I've seen people quit the theater community in Tallahassee because they did not feel welcome because they quote unquote weren't serious about it. And I've tried to talk to them about it, but they decided, no, I thank you for talking to me, but it's just something I'd rather not do. And it's sad because we need more people involved in the arts, not fewer.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Wow. Yeah, what were we talking about? Can't even remember.
I hijacked it again.
We were
I'm
talking
sorry.
about marriage before,
Yeah.
and then we got on acting somehow.
You brought up the nice little transition of talking about you brought up something that was relevant to both, which I thought was a nice segue, whether you meant to do it or not.
There was
no.
there's no rhyme or reason to how we got there, and there's no reason to point out like why did we even get there. I'm happy with how we got there.
No. It's not like I'm upset. I was just genuinely curious, like, how did we get here?
Because I brought up the
something
thing of
you
people
said.
morphing their traits to me, and then
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's it.
That's right.
Yep. Yes, that's right. Because it was like people pretending to be somebody else, and then you equated that to people telling people who were involved in theater, "Oh, that was great. Everything was great," when in fact it wasn't.
Yeah, it's hard to do as an artist, just to give criticism but be nice at the same time, even when that criticism is negative.
well, it's a skill like anything else.
It is definitely a skill, and it's one that.
And not everyone asks for
No.
it. People don't want to. Some people just don't want to hear it. They just want a pat on the back and a good job, sport.
Yep. It's sad. I come across as like an ogre when I say this, but you guys have seen Whiplash, right? With
what?
J.K. Simmons, the Whiplash.
Whiplash,
yeah.
yes.
Nope.
I've seen Whiplash.
Okay.
You have not?
No,
Okay.
unfortunately.
His character in that is an absolute monster. I mean, he's despicable, but he does say something in that movie that I think the idea of is very, 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 very popular. It's very, very true in some respects. He says the most damaging thing you can do to somebody is tell them good job. And I don't think that's necessarily 100% true, but I get the gist of what he's saying is if that's all you tell somebody, they're never going to know what they have to do to improve.
I don't want to go on a Whiplash tangent, but you can see how in that movie, how all he wanted to do was to improve his students. And he might have not done that in the correct way, but he did it in a very efficient way.
Right. And it was one of those things where, hey man, I get where you're coming from, but the way you're doing this is creeping me out.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, I'm gonna equate that to a cute. I think it's a DreamWorks movie. I don't know. What do you guys know? Have you seen Meet the Robinsons?
Yes, that's Disney.
Meet the Robinsons.
Is it Disney?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
good.
It is, yeah.
It's a great movie, and it's the same
It
kind of
is.
deal where like the whole movie is based around you learn so much more from failure than you do from success.
absolutely.
And they do it
yeah.
in such a cutesy way.
It's such a great film in a lot of ways.
We could talk about that. That's actually a very cool topic that Daniel and I have talked a lot about. What people think of animated features nowadays.
I could probably write a dissertation on that. Gage knows it too because I've gone on.
Yeah, he's gone on while we went into coffee, and I can't remember what film. I think it was like The Iron
Oh,
Giant.
it's one of the
your
greatest
favorites.
American-made animated films.
Yes, it
Ever.
is.
It was so weird because it wasn't marketed that well.
They screwed it up. They screwed up the marketing. It annoys the heck out of me to this day because, ironically, Brad Bird, or maybe not unironically, was the director of that. He went on to direct The Incredibles and Ratatouille.
And Mission
And
Impossible,
Mission Impossible
Ghost
Ghost
Protocol.
Protocol and Tomorrowland, which is a...
Yeah, we don't talk about that.
No, not everything can be a gem. The thing about Tomorrowland, very succinctly, I said it wasn't a great movie, but I really admired the idea it was trying to put forth. So on that, I thought at least I'll hold it close to my heart. But the biggest concern about animated film is if you look at Asia, they consider animated film a legitimate art form over there. Here, it's marketed as kids movies, and I'll hear people talk about specific animated films, whether they be from Pixar, DreamWorks, or anyone else, and get upset because there's content in the film that they think is too traumatizing for kids. It shouldn't be in a kids movie. Well, Brad Bird flat out said that they don't make kids movies.
Mm-hmm.
They make movies that everybody should be able to enjoy.
No, they make movies, yeah.
Yeah, and
Also, I feel like the same thing that you're talking about with animation could be talked about with comedy. How people don't really
absolutely.
say that comedy
And it-
has any, I don't want to say any substance, but they're like, oh, it's just for laughs.
No, you're right. I used to be an Oscar geek. I still like them, but I don't follow them as much as I used to. If you look at the last true comedy to win Best Picture was, I think, Tom Jones, 1960s.
Really?
Yeah,
That far back?
Yeah, I mean,
I didn't think that any comedy won Best Picture.
yeah, I think that was the last one because Oscars have this stigma hanging crying over them that the movies that they award these awards to have to be important.
Yeah, even the Lego movie, which I would consider as a comedy, didn't even win Best Animated Film.
Well, there is a reason.
It wasn't even nominated.
No, and I found out why. I was angry too until I found out why.
Why?
Too many live action scenes in it to qualify.
Really?
Yes. You remember the whole sequence with Will Ferrell actually being the dad and the kid playing with the Legos in the basement? That disqualified it to being an animated film.
Oh, man.
It's considered mixed media. It sucks because it was one of the better films of that year, easily. I can't remember what actually won that year.
I think it was like How to Train Your Dragon 2 or something.
It's a good movie, too. I like that movie.
I like How to Train Your Dragon 2.
The score on that movie is great.
Well, John Powell, if he keeps this up, is going to become the next John Williams because the stuff he's been doing lately is just epic.
What else has John Powell done?
Oh, man, off the top of my head, I just isn't registering. I know he did the Dragon movies, and I saw his name on something else the other day that I said, well, of course that was him. I think calling him the next John Williams is probably an insult to Michael Giacchino.
I was just thinking about him.
Yeah.
He's the guy who did the Mission Impossible. He did the newer Star Trek movies.
He's also worked with Pixar a lot. He did Ratatouille. He did The Incredibles.
He did Incredibles,
yes.
yeah.
He's worked with Brad Bird a lot. The other movie that I could not remember off the top of my head that John Powell scored was Happy Feet.
Oh, Happy Feet. Isn't that weird that George Miller directed Happy Feet and then he directed like Mad Max, Fury Road?
I don't actually think so. I think when I watch Happy Feet, because I actually did not see Happy Feet until a couple of years ago, and it was after I found out that George Miller directed it. And if you go watch it, you can see a lot of his, I won't say his directorial styles, because that sometimes is hard to translate, but his ideas. A lot of what he thinks about the world and what specific things mean, you can see his personality come out of that. To me, I think the most surprising animated film I've seen was Fantastic Mr. Fox, Wes Anderson.
Was that the most surprising?
To me. And I'm going to commit.
That seems like the most Wes Anderson movie to me.
Well, this is the reason I say this, and I'm probably going to say something that other people are going to be surprised. I usually don't like his films. I try to watch them, and after watching a couple, they all come across as the same to me. The exceptions to that were Fantastic Mr. Fox and Moonrise Kingdom. I really enjoyed both those films, and I can't even explain why. He's definitely loaded with quirk. There's no doubt about it, but after a while, his character riffs just start to come across as the same to me. Fantastic Mr. Fox, because it had the facade of the animated film in front of it, just came off a little different to me. And because it was animated with Wes Anderson's personality, it came off as something completely different than I was used to, and so I was able to get into it a little more.
Was Fantastic Mr. Fox a stop-motion-based film? I can't remember if it was 3D. It was.
Yes, it was.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Had Bill Murray, Meryl Streep.
George
Streep, I believe?
Clooney.
Oh, I forgot. The best Batman, George Clooney.
Oh, God. Don't make me hurt you.
Sorry about that, but yeah. I think we've touched on a lot of great points on marriage and acting. What was our topic?
Going back to what we were talking about briefly, it's probably not going to be brief, but
it's all right.
Regarding American, anyways, perception of animated film, and I think we're actually starting to approach kind of an advent of people recognizing animation more in terms of an adult, because I think there's been a shift in that audience, especially in terms of animated series on TV. You're finding a lot more of the audiences in these big shows. The one that's coming to mind right now is Steven Universe. It actually has a huge audience base from 20s to 30s of viewers. That is a majority viewers.
That's not the first time that happened. I don't want to date myself. I don't know how old you guys are. But when I was graduating high school and going into college, Animaniacs was just coming on.
Oh yeah, Animaniacs as well.
And that was way ahead of its time because people were like, this is really mature content. And people were in college like, yeah, this is great. Mm-hmm. And the thing is about that, though, what I've noticed, and this is not to disagree with your point because it's definitely got merit. I have noticed that because the film, I think a lot of it has to do with, I'm going to say it's because it's not Disney's fault. It's not. It's just that people see the name Disney and that immediately thinks about Snow White and Cinderella and all those movies and how, and even back then, the movies weren't just kids' films, but for some reason, the idea of them being actual films rather than feature-length cartoons, people couldn't get over the wall because it was at the same time that Looney Tunes was becoming this huge thing, which were cartoons and in short little bursts to digest easily. And although I agree with you that there's definitely a more appreciation for the art form overall, you can still tell that we have a long way to go. If you want to take a perfect example of that, take a look at the Oscar nominations for Best Picture this past year. The animated films that came out last year, you want to talk about a great animated film, Inside Out, which I think...
Oh, it's great.
Honestly, it's my top 2 or 3 Pixar of all time. The rules for the Oscars are they can have between 6 and 10 Best Picture nominations per year.
Sorry, what were the other animated features that year?
Oh, God, what else was there? Anomalisa.
Anomalisa, yeah.
Anomalisa.
God, that was great,
I was actually
too.
going to mention that when we were talking about Fantastic Mr. Fox, like other stop-motion-based movies.
Yeah, it's such a great... And it's so, like, again, different. They always say we can have between 7 and 10. Well, there were, I believe, 8 Best Picture nominations this past year. Are you telling me that with 2 open spots, neither Anomalisa or Inside Out could qualify for a 9th spot?
Well, I'm a little biased because I'm like, I don't think there should even be 10 slots, let alone 6 to 10 spots for Best Picture.
I agree.
I think there
agree
should
with
just
you.
be 5.
I agree. But to be fair, I actually am a little more okay with it because you're seeing genres get nominated that never would have before.
Yeah, if you said to me, like, even like 2 years ago, hey, Mad Max is going to be nominated for Best Picture, I would have scoffed at you, man.
And there was no way it would have been had there only been 5 nominations. And people talk about the reason them expanding the Best Picture category back in 2009 was because of The Dark Knight being snubbed in 2008. I think it was just as much the fact that WALL-E got snubbed. Because I still think WALL-E is Pixar Citizen
WALL-E
Kane.
is much better than The Dark Knight.
Right, I agree. I big friends look at me funny when I love superhero movies, but I say Dark Knight was only as acclaimed as it was because Heath Ledger's performance and because he died after he made it.
Mm-hmm.
He deserved his award.
Right, yeah.
Don't get me wrong. He was amazing. You take every scene. I want somebody to do this. I want somebody to take a cut of that movie and take every scene that he's in and remove it and tell me what's left. Because I'm sorry, I just don't buy into that entire arc. And I like Christopher Nolan normally, and I loved Batman Begins. I think Batman Begins is actually the best of the 3 Christopher Nolan Batman movies.
I would say the same.
But people are slobbering over Dark Knight because of Heath Ledger. And yes, Heath Ledger was amazing in it, but the rest of the film just was okay.
We've had a lot of great animated movies come out.
Yeah, I mean,
over the past, like, even just 5 years.
the new Pixar Renaissance is really funny because they had some really great movies early on. And then there was that kerfuffle that they had with Disney where it looked like they were going to separate. And it was during that time that they put out Cars, which John Lasseter specifically said he was doing specifically to generate capital so that they could make sure that they could continue to make movies in case the Disney production deal actually did break off.
Really?
Yes.
I thought that happened just after Cars was released.
No.
But I didn't know it dated back to even before Cars was
The first movie Pixar released after they announced that they were staying with them was Ratatouille.
Right, which is a very artsy kind of film.
And
even though it's Patton Oswalt voicing it around.
Right, and it is. I'll honestly say, talking about, passions informing other passions, it was because of that movie that I got into cooking. No lie. That movie made me realize...
It does make you want to cook.
It does, and I learned how to cook
does.
because of that movie, and I love cooking because of that movie. I just adore it. First of all, Brad Bird is an amazing director, and I think the reason that the Ghost Protocol was as good as it was because Brad Bird probably knows how to pace a film better than anybody else. He took his knowledge of being able to pace an animated film because, hey, if you got an hour and a half to do an animated film, you've got to know what works, know what doesn't, cut out things that don't. The story stays moving forward because although it's not a kid's film, a lot of children are going to be seeing it and you've got to hold their attention. He took his ability to pace a film and he took it to an action flick and it just moved. I mean, cooked. It never stopped. And that's why when I see Tomorrowland, I'm like, I understand he was trying to be more contemplative, but you could see he was fighting against his natural tendencies the entire time.
I want to blame Damien Lindelof.
If I have a chance to blame Damien Lindelof for anything, I usually do. So I'm with you on that.
Yeah. He's going to do the next Incredibles movie. And when people were speculating, they're like, oh, who's going to direct that? I'm like,
please.
Who else are you going to get for that movie? The first movie had amazing action sequences that I would say they're like Mission Impossible. Good.
I mean, first of all, people joked when that movie came out that it was, we don't even need to make a Fantastic Four movie anymore because it's going to be better than any Fantastic Four movie you could make. And that has turned out to be 100% true.
Yes.
So far, yeah.
And the reason I like Pixar and Brad Bird is because when they kept asking him, when are you going to do a sequel? When are you going to do a sequel? When are you going to do a sequel? His answer was always the same. I'm not going to do a sequel until I find a story I think is worthy of one. He wasn't going to rush it. Pixar wasn't going to make him rush it. And that's why I really admire them. The thing is, I will say saying saying that now, I am a little disappointed that they seem to have fallen into the sequel crutch lately. So,
They said they had a pretty good idea for Toy Story 4, though.
well,
But it ended on such a good note. I'm very...
right, exactly. Perfect analogy for me is Toy Story 4 right now would be the equivalent of the 9th season of Scrubs.
I was just about to say the same goddamn thing. Holy shit. I was like, I hope he says the 9th season of Scrubs. I hope he says the 9th
Oh my
season of
god.
Scrubs.
Oh my god. You
Yes.
cannot end Scrubs and 8th season better than it ended. Period. End of story. Tacking on that 9th season
It was-
for just because
They
it's
shoehorned it
infuriating.
in. Oh, it was such bullshit. So, yes, I completely agree. 100%. Bawling at the end of season 8, was it, right? It ended on
8.
season
It was
8.
8. Mhm.
And he just...
With him looking
Yeah.
at the screen of the
and just
memories.
The book of love is filled. I'm just like, oh.
Yeah. There's not been a TV show, a comedy that could hit you with a left hard turn and make you start sobbing out of nowhere than that one. The writing in that show was just unbelievable.
That and Futurama.
Oh,
Futurama
really-
did the same exact thing,
Okay,
like with
I've
some
gotta
episodes.
ask
It
you
ended
this.
a few times, actually.
We actually had a conversation online about this. Do you guys watch Game of Thrones?
Occasionally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. How far are you going to go back in Game of Thrones?
Let's just say the episode The Door.
I've seen a
Okay.
lot of references
Season
to it. I
6,
haven't seen
episode
it.
5. Okay. Something happens at the end of that episode that is heart-wrenching, brutal, incredibly well written, and a perfect example of how an author can cunningly play the long game of a story arc. But after that episode hit, my other friends and I, geeky friends and I, were talking about where does this rank on the heartbreak scale of TV episodes that you've seen. And we came up with like a top 3 or top 4.
Oh, I've seen this on Facebook. You're talking about Buffy's The Body. You're
Yes.
talking-
My Lunch and My Screw Up, both from Scrubs, were on there. Jurassic Bark from Futurama, which is completely unfair of an episode,
It's
especially for someone who
so-
loves dogs.
yeah.
And even though it's not necessarily a heartbreaking episode, it still gets you. And the series went downhill. But do you guys remember Heroes?
Yeah.
There was
Yes.
one episode in that show that was so good that everything else after was so bad we didn't understand. It was Company Man. It was the episode where Jack Coleman, Horn-Rimmed Glasses guy, we go into his origin story and find out why he has Claire protected, who he is really. And at the very, very end of the episode, after you realize that, he's doing this out of love for her, but he knows too much, he tells the guy who's able to rip the memories out of his head, he's crying as he realizes this is the last time he's going to remember who Claire is. Tearly gets on his knees in front of him and says, "Go deep, get them all." And it's heart-wrenching. And the thing is, that was such a phenomenal episode, I don't understand what happened after that.
Was that season 2 or 1?
I think it was actually season 1.
Because I heard some good things up until the finale of the first
Yeah,
season.
they didn't know how to end it. You hate that when you get to TV shows and you realize it's doing well and they just obviously don't have a way to end it. They didn't. Yeah, definitely Jurassic Park.
So anyways,
The
you
Body.
were talking about The Body.
Yeah,
and,
Jurassic Park, The
Jurassic
Body,
Park.
and the episode The Door, and those 2 episodes of Scrubs. Probably the 5 times I've watched TV in shocked silence of oh
Okay,
my
wait,
God.
repeat. What were the 2 episodes of Scrub? I'm sure it's the one with Brendan Fraser.
My Screw Up. That's the one with Brendan
My Screw Up,
Fraser.
yep. What was the other
and
one?
My Lunch, which is the one where Dr. Cox loses 3 patients because he did not test for rabies.
Is that where JD goes over to him and his house and they sit there and he's like, "I'm proud of you."
That's the episode
that's
after.
the episode after.
This is they had a patient of theirs come in who was sick. It was the person they'd always saw. She dies, and after she dies, he harvests organs from them because he has 3 transplant patients in the hospital waiting to get organs. They needed them. 2 of them were down on the list, and for some reason they thought that the reason that she died, she had been trying to kill herself, so they thought it was an overdose related. Turns out she had died of a rabies infection, and one by one, each of the patients that he was trying to get the organs to died off. And the first 2, people were like, "Hey man, I know it's hard, but these people were going to die if you did not do this transplant. So yes, they died anyway, but what were you going to do, man?" But the thing is, the third one, he decided to give him a liver because he had one. The guy could have lived for a while without a transplant, and after he loses him, you can see him fighting and he just absolutely loses it. He's throws the crash cart against the wall, looks over at JD and says, "He wasn't about to die, was he, newbie? He could have lived a few more weeks easy." And then he just walks out, and JD says to him, "You've always told me as a doctor that the moment you start taking things personally, you're done as a doctor." And Cox smiles and says, "You're right," and just walks out of the hospital. It was an absolutely phenomenal
Yeah.
episode. See, the thing about Scrubs, they also know how to use music well. That was the episode.
They used the fray in that episode, didn't they?
How to Save a Life. Yes,
Wow.
that was a great use of that song. But yeah, both those two episodes are just...
I wouldn't say the whole entire episode, but they're also something I want to reference from Scrubs was the guest star of, what's his name? Back to the Future.
Michael J. Fox, where he played the guy with obsessive compulsive disorder.
Yes, and when he just is washing his hands compulsively and he just screams like he just can't take it anymore. I'm just like, oh, he's such a good actor.
And the end of that episode where he's standing in the room just constantly turning off the light switch. Oh,
that one's good too.
Yeah, it's really good.
I miss Scrubs.
So do I. There aren't very many TV shows I actually watch religiously anymore. I watched Game of Thrones, and I watch Daredevil and Jessica Jones on Netflix, and I've actually started to watch Elementary, which is a little bit above average procedural, but I watch it for the performance of Johnny Lee Miller, who's absolutely amazing in it, who plays Sherlock.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
well, he's up against Benedict Cumberbatch and Robert Downey Jr., the other Sherlock Holmes.
Right. He definitely has like the quirkiness, but I think he plays a more... I don't know if you ever... This show called Eli Stone. It was on a few years ago.
I've heard of it.
It wasn't on very long, but the guy who played Eli Stone plays Sherlock, and he's completely... You can't even recognize him. He's lost a lot of weight. Of course, it's never actually confirmed, but I think he's on the spectrum. I think that's how they play him, the autism spectrum a little bit. And I just think he's amazing. Hand acting, facial acting in that show, for him specifically, is really good. There's other actors who are decent. Lucy Liu actually isn't bad, but when you're trying up against this person, you just come across as small.
I have to put this point in, which is, it's an awful change, kind of a change from what we were going on. But there's not many shows that I watch religiously either. But I just started watching one today that I'm super into, and I'm not proud of it, but there's a funny story behind how I started watching it. So this past weekend I had gone to MegaCon in Orlando with some friends, and Alex had found this girl that he was super into, and they had been talking for a while.
Is this like a theme? Because this has happened
Has it?
before.
Oh yeah, this is probably a constant theme. Just running through the story arc of our podcast. But
running through the Alex
we're driving to the con, and we're trying to find a parking garage, and he sees her walking on the sidewalk, and he's just like, oh man, that's her. She's just walking, and she's in a Marty McFly costume. I kid you not, he pretty much just like duck and rolls out of my moving car, and just like sprints after her. So now it's just Connor and I in the front seat like, oh, all right, well, he's gone. What do we do? So he runs off. We don't hear from him for another like 45 minutes. And we go and we find a parking garage it's pretty far away from the convention, but it's super cheap parking. And we end up taking a bus over to the convention. Okay, so we're on the way to the con now on the bus from the parking garage. And as we're going there, we see this guy that's obviously, I'm pretty sure he's going to the convention, but he's riding his bike there, like pedaling super hard. And he's in this full-on like get-up of like a biker suit. That are like skin tight, you know what I'm talking about? Like the Tour de France kind of suits. But it's covered in like Chex-Mex letters. And it's like some just like Japanese stuff going down the sides. Sorry, that was super racist. So we know he's obviously going to the convention and he's dressed up as some biker guy. And
some Akira
we
guy.
start joking about the kinds of anime that they'll put out. Like they have an anime for literally everything, and we didn't know whether or not they had one for biking. And so while we're sitting there, we come up with this whole entire elaborate idea of like a biking anime. And we come up with the theme song to it, and he puts up like this whole composition of how the anime intro would look. And there'd be a scene where the guy's like fixing his bike with like a dirty rag, and he throws it over his shoulder, and he looks up at the sky, and then it like goes to the intro like title. It was super funny. He sends me a message today on Facebook that there's an actual biker anime, and how they turn like riding bikes into the most intense shit ever. And so now I'm like 4 episodes in watching this anime about people riding bicycles.
What's it called?
It's like Yowamagami Biker or something. Hold on.
That's hilarious.
Oh, it's beautiful. Let me see.
Is that why you were like, hey, can we delay the podcast for 2 hours?
Oh no, I was actually studying for my I was studying pathology, but
I thought it was like, I gotta watch this biker anime, but I got this podcast to do.
Yowamushi Pedal. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's awesome.
They
do really have an anime for everything.
I know. It's amazing. I'll get into anything that has like intense voices and colorful lights. Yeah, I would study for like an hour and then like take a half an hour break and watch an episode. So sorry, Gage.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Yowamushi Pedal. That's my plug of the day.
Okay, speaking of plugs, we should probably wrap this up.
What a note to end on.
Really?
We're plugging it up.
All right.
Daniel, if people wanted to reach you on Twitter, where would they go?
My Twitter handle is @FilmAdept, FILMADEPT. It's a lot of personal stuff. Occasionally I'll post about projects that I'm on, but it's mostly just ruminations about life. Follow me. I'm sure I can at least be good in conversation at 140 characters at a time.
Nice. Very insightful.
Yeah, he has long John McCain rants on there. Check it out. No, he doesn't. I am @Gage Agnew on Twitter, @Gage @KAgnew on Instagram and @AlmostAdultsPod on Instagram and Twitter. Jean Claude, is there anything you would like to plug?
If any one of our listeners has an idea for an anime that has yet to be made, maybe one based on doing your homework, then...
Somebody needs to make an anime about writing an anime.
Yeah, there's an anime about writing a manga, I'm pretty
That's
sure.
close enough, I guess.
Yeah.
Anime, manga, they're the same
Tweet
thing.
us at our podcast, and maybe I'll do like a 3 frame per second animatic of an anime. Who knows?
Ooh,
right?
That'd be cool. And anyways, I would like to end this by pulling up our first, it's exclusive here, our first iTunes review.
Oh,
Really?
Yes.
I actually saw this earlier when I was listening.
Who's it by? Anonymous?
I'm pretty sure I know who it is. It's
Don't reveal it. I don't want to know. I just want to hear it.
Okay, all right. The show tickles me in a way that makes me laugh, get a little agitated, and say, stop! Stop! Knock it off, Dwayne! This show is about Gage and Jean Claude as they share life experiences and find out the true meaning of what it is to be an adult. Is what I would say, but typically what Van Damme talks about, some awesome, fascinating life lesson he learned working every job in the world, and 12 Gage making sudden realizations that his microphone looks like a wiener with legs and feet. That's why he's laughing at the logo. All in all, this is a great show, and hopefully they'll help me be an adult too.
Aw, that was super sweet. I have not worked every job in the world. I just watch a lot of YouTube videos about different professions.
Oh my god, sorry, this is also an exclusive. I found that that Daniel Gray was not following me before on Twitter.
No, I am following you. I just followed the podcast because I didn't know the podcast had a Twitter account.
Oh, you did. I thought... Sorry, I thought you were just now following me.
No.
I was like, how has Daniel not followed me after all this time?
How could I have responded to your tweets and asked you to be on the podcast if I wasn't following you, Gage?
Oh, good point. Anyways, good night, everybody.
Good night, unless you're listening to this in the morning, in which case, good morning, ladies.